Right, guys, welcome back. So, had a bit of a moment. I finished up the passenger seat, and I have gone ahead and put in this air filtration system and the front sun visors. So if I just flip over the page, and then I'll explain why I've done it this way. We've got this system here. So there's part of the rear rail. There are 3 attachments, and here are the filter system that plugs into that little box we glued in on the floor, and then other 2 tubes. So that's for the driver, the co-driver, rear seat passenger, and then the other 2 rear seat passengers and the driver. This will be the NBC gear, so it'll be nuclear, chemical, biological warfare air filtration system, and it will be for a closed circuit breathing system for the crew. So, reasons why I've pushed ahead is that is the last part of the interior we're needing to do, except for the roof, which is what we're going to do next. The rest of the details we're looking at are all on the exterior of the cab, so we can worry about them after. But what I want to do is get this to the point where we can actually paint and detail the interior, get it put together, get the roof on, and then we can focus on the outside. Obviously we can mask the windows off, and we can carry on the build. So what we've got is the front windscreen, so we can see that, the 2 sun visors. They are parts PE, so Photo Etch MD13. They're thinned on one end, which I've annealed. So I've heated it up until it glows red with a lighter, and then let it cool down naturally. And then you've got parts K13, which is the plastic piece for fastening it to the window frame. And with my very old and cheap and nasty Photo Etch bender, but it's a very good one, is I've put the part in, got my safety blade under the edge, and folded it up right around over this nice beveled edge here to make to fold the metal back onto itself, roughly halfway on the thinned piece. Slid in the plastic part, clipped it back under here, and then with this burnishing tool just gently burnished it down and folded it over the plastic so it fitted nicely. So that's that part done. You can see the rough angle I've put it at, and when we put the windscreen in, you can see there that the sun visors are showing just nicely down to protect the crew. Nice little bit of detail. I needed these in first because they'll need to be painted before we put the windscreen on. So what else have we got? Well, as we've discussed, we've got the 2 seats that are nicely done. We have got the rear seat that is nicely in now. The filtration system, we've glued the whole pipework in, and this is why I glued the pipework in, so I could get the right position for the actual filter. The filter itself will come out to be painted, which is really good. There's enough space in to put the glass in, and when you look through it, you'll be able to see the pipe detail on the inside, so it'll just give it a little more interest. And then finally we have the dash that can now gently come out now that the steering column is fixed in place. So we now have a cab that is in a position to paint, which is absolutely fantastic, and it's just what we needed. And that's going to be nearly the next job, because we've got one more job to do. If we move all this to one side, there is one more job to do. And that is, if we turn the page over, that is the roof. We need to do the roof. And the reason we need to do the roof is because we have, obviously we've got to bend the Photo Etch, but we need to attach the roof to the internal framing, because we won't be able to do that once it's all painted. So what I want to do next is we'll obviously jump right ahead, is to go and build up the interior air conditioning unit and the frame. We're not going to put the frame or glue it onto the cab. Okay, we're not going to glue the frame onto the cab. What we are going to do is fold and form the roof. If I can get that in frame, a bit too zoomed in. There we go. We're going to fold and form the roof, get it glued onto the frame, make sure it fits perfectly on the cab, and then we're going to paint it and get the inside painted, which will be brilliant because then we can glue the roof on. I don't want the roof to be able to lift off. I want it glued on firmly, and that will be the whole interior done. Get the doors on, get the glazing in, get it all masked up, and I said that will be the cab ready to go. So I'm going to get organized for getting the roof sorted, and we'll come back probably in the next episode. We'll focus on the roof, and then once the roof's done, we'll actually start painting and start getting some detail in this truck, which is really quite exciting. Welcome back, guys. So I've just removed part B15 from the frame. We're just going to cut these mold release points off the frame. So these are the extra pieces of styrene that's integral to the molding, but it's where the push pins lever the frame out of the mold. Now this is quite a fragile piece, so we do need to be very, very careful as we come in here to clean all these marks up. So just supporting it on my finger with a very sharp scalpel blade, letting the blade do the work, and very minimal pressure. Coming in here and just clean those wetness marks away. There is a tiny bit of flash on this, could do with being cleaned away, and then there is also the wetness marks here on the end that were left when we snipped off the sprue. So I know I'm cutting towards myself with a scalpel, but it's my hand and I'll take the risk. I have been doing this for years. I've also been cutting myself for years, so it really comes down to whatever you feel comfortable doing. These parts are really tricky to work with just purely for the fact they're so thin and fragile. You can see it flexing as I work with it. So we do want to be as careful as we can. We want to avoid bending and definitely avoid breaking. So if you put a bend in this, it's going to be an absolute nightmare to straighten out to get the fit. It needs to be a good fit. It's a really important part of the cab build. A little bit of burring, just separation burring. Just get in there with a blade and scrape away. Right. Now that we've got it separated, what we need to do is check the fit. The fit should fit snugly. There's a good ledge for it to sit into. All 6 legs should fit nicely into it. If it doesn't, then we've got a problem, but it does quite nicely. What we can do as well is get the windscreen and just check with the windscreen in place. It's not a bad fit at all. And looking how it goes, it looks like it actually will probably glue to the rear of the windscreen, which might work in our favour. Right, so we know that fits, that's good. I see a couple of bearing nubs to move away, just here. and here. Right, so we need part A21 and A18. And that is obviously the air conditioning unit for the cab. So where is 18? So if you're on sprue A, sprue C is not going to give us the parts we're looking for. So here's 18 and there's 21. We're really getting through these sprues, and we're starting to get quite a lot of empty sprues, which is really rather nice. So when you start this kit, you're just faced with a mountain of sprues. Again, just being careful not to damage the louver details on the back. Get a little sand. You've got lovely vent details along the front. There is ejector pin marks there. They're not just too bad, but we'll give it a sand anyway just to be safer. Sorry. They're quite recessed. Nobody's going to see them. Just sand off any sprue attachment points. Right, so looking at the instructions, these two small slots here go to the front, and that locates really nicely on the framing. Should help to stabilize the center of the framing, and it fits very nicely too. So we'll just come in here with some extra thin. And just the back of the scalpel. Use the scalpel in the initial whilst the glue vents off, and then we don't get fingerprints all over it. We can just press it down there, and then obviously this part fits with the round vents to the front. It won't fit the other way, it'll only fit one way. So just pop it down, touch and flow. Again, there's some very good reference photographs of this air conditioning unit, well, the whole interior of the cab. That's that nicely glued in. We're happy with that. Next thing to do is to get the fret of the roof panel on. Beautifully molded. What we are going to have to do is give this a key to give something for this plastic to stick onto. I also need my acrylic sheet to cut down onto so we don't damage or bend or warp the part. The part does have a bit of a bend in it, whether that's from packing or from the changes in metal thickness from the photo etch process, I don't know. But it is what it is. We will overcome. So sharp scalpel blade, and then gently lift it away from the plastic backing. Right, you can see just how twisted this part is. Not the best, to be fair, not the best at all. So usual thing, come in, clean off any attachment points, fret attachment points that we've cut through. I need to go and do the interior as well. It is just a fine sanding stick I'm using. Don't use the coarse side of the stick, as it will catch and bend. Right, we can just try and manipulate that down. Might be it'll just have to happen when it gets glued. You can see if we just lay it flat is what we'll need to do. We can use the coarse side when it's flat to start with. This will help put a key into the metal, turn it over to the fine to polish out any scratches. And all we want to do here is key up this metal so the super glue's got something to stick to. That's fine. When you get that painted, you'll not see any of those marks. Right. We need to fold this line here and this line here. And we've got a handy guide here, which is a 1-to-1 guide to give us the angles. So I'll get my hold and fold with a big long edge on it. Pop that in. Line it up with the, just so that the fold line is showing, making sure it's even all the way along, and then just fold. Use your fingers on the back of it, right along the back, so you're folding it all at the same time. Same with this side. Don't worry if you folded slightly over, we can always bend it back. It's better to be able to bend it back slightly as I have to put it back in and refold it. So same again, pop this in until you can just see the line evenly along, tighten it down, 2 fingers, fold it. That really is just like a banana. However, those folds are going to strengthen this up perfectly. And what we can do is just pop that down onto the diagram. Actually, we've lucked out, they're just pretty much okay. So we need to figure out what's front and what's back. So then the smaller piece at the front is the front, obviously, and then this larger piece is for the back of the cab. So we then need to figure out where it goes on the cab. So we'll just come with the roof and pop it on to see how it goes. And that fits not too bad. Not too bad at all, but we do need to start thinking about getting it bent back into shape a bit. So just incremental bends all over the roof. Just try gentle pressure to straighten it out. And it does straighten. It's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. There we go. Now what the other things we can use to straighten is we put it back on the perspex. We can use the round handle of an X-Acto knife and just gently burnish it down with it across the whole length at the same time. And that has put the straightness pretty much back into that. But you need to be careful. You don't want to roll the handle. You are literally holding the handle still and dragging it over to mold it flat. If you roll it, you can put a roll into it and it'll start curling up on you. We're just wanting to get it back flat, and I'm actually quite happy with how that is. We'll come back and try that onto the cab. And you can see now why you want to do this before you even think about painting, because you're just going to destroy everything. That fits pretty good. So what next? Right, well, what we need to do, I think, is we'll need to set this in here. I don't know, will that go in there? Yeah, you can see here that that's going to be offset. In fact, if you look at the rivet lines on the roof, that is where the frame is to go. So those are huck rivet lines, and that's where the frame is going to go. There are the front and back ones after we've rubbed over it. The front and back ones are showing through. So we do have a rough position to put this piece on. So if you can see there, we've got huck rivet lines, and if we burnish here and here, try not to put too much of a dent in it because it will show through on the other side, which means we've got to take it out. So just come back with this here and here. It's not too bad. Keeping it nice and straight. We can certainly see the huck rivet lines here and here, and that's where we need to glue this onto. And we've got the central point. So we should be able to get this thing mounted up, he says optimistically. It'd help if I put it on the right way around. So that's roughly where it should be. So I think what I'm going to try and do is I'm actually going to try and super glue this on here, and then we'll put it on the cab and see how it goes. So what I'm going to do is we're going to run glue along that hook rivet line. A couple of places. And then along the back. We don't need to get it all done, because we can come back in once we're happy with the position of the frame. We can come back in and glue it up and wick the glue under the frame. So we want to get that in the middle, center it with the rivet lines, and then center it with the hole in the center of the roof. When we're happy it's square, we can come in and just press down to the glue. If I get that into picture for you guys. So press and hold. Try not to glue your finger to it too much. It's slightly off center. Don't worry about that. Let's just try it to see. We can adjust later. So that goes in like so. It's fitting okay, isn't it? Back side in there, that side in there. Like so. Yeah, that's okay, that. Whatever we're going to do, we're going to have to do some repair work when we get this roof on. It's slightly off center here, but the position in fore and aft is okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this into position centrally, and then we'll just come along here and cut a scalpel blade underneath there, just so it gets a chance to jump over. It's a shame because it doesn't look too far off actually. It looks not bad. But the instructions are a bit vague as to whereabouts its position is. Just thing is, once it's glued down, you're not actually going to see. You're not going to see where it is in relation to the air conditioning unit, especially when you get the air conditioning unit on the top on the outside. So that's fitting nicely there, and that's fitting reasonably nicely there, and they're both reasonably even as well. Bit of pondering to do here, I think, just to see what we're going to do to get this sorted out. I actually think it's in a reasonably good spot, and I'm inclined to leave it. So I think if we move it over, even just that bit, because if we look at the frame is pretty much central. It would appear the air conditioning unit is slightly off. So I'm thinking I'm going to glue the air conditioning unit down into position and leave this frame glued here and here, because to my eye, it's actually not too bad. Yeah, and what I'm also going to do is we're going to make up the exterior unit to put on, because I think that's going to give us a lot of strength and help center this. So I'm going to cut out these parts, get them made up, and then we'll come back and see how it fits with this. So we'll see you again shortly. Welcome back, guys. So moving on from yesterday, we've got this piece of roof framing completely glued in. Tiny little bit of cleanup here. You can get super glue debonder. I don't have any, but it's something that might be worth investing in just for doing this cleanup here. Basically, you paint it on and it makes the super glue kind of go into a gungy mess, but a little bit of a scrape with an old scalpel blade and it gets off anyway. And you can get it pretty accurate to the frame as well. That clears that away nicely. So we've got this really nicely stuck down, cleaned up all around, and there's a nice key on the metal roof. We've made up the air conditioning top unit, and that just sits on the recess there. So a little bit of super glue around the rim will sort that out, no bother at all. Now of note, if you look on the roof, you can see that this air conditioning unit for the interior does not sit square to the roof panel, but when you look at how the roof framing is stuck to the roof, it's pretty much bang where it needs to be. So obviously either I've done something wrong or the frame's slightly off, but either way it doesn't marry up with the hole. Not just too much of a problem, because realistically when you get this all together you're probably not going to see the fact that it doesn't marry up. But what we do need to do is obviously glue on this top piece just to add a bit more strength to the roof, and then we need to spray matte black into here once it's glued in, just to hide any plastic from view. So that's the next job, is to get this glued onto there. I'm going to do it all with super glue, CA, cyanacrylate, purely because the bulk of the bond is going to be to the photo etch rather as plastic on plastic. I can and probably will wick in a little bit of extra thin just on these points where it is touching the plastic, just to try and give it a bit more strength in its bond. So as usual, old trusty Tamiya pot, and when it gets to the point that this is so full of glue and you can't scrape it off, just chuck it in the dishwasher and that will unstick the glue from the bottom of the pot rather nicely. Failing that, leave it soak in a sink full of really hot water. So with the Display super glue applicator, and you'll have to apologize if I happen to slip out of frame with it being zoomed in as much as it is to try and get good detail shots for you to see what I'm doing, then your actual frame of work is quite small. So sometimes it does tend to just drift out of frame. I am constantly watching the monitor to see, so I'm trying to keep it in frame for you guys. So just a nice layer of glue all the way around, and then just turn it over and then place it on, and there is a rim around this part that locks into the photo etch part. So you'll be able to get it on, get it centered, and then just push and hold, and it will grip. We can use a little bit of accelerator if we want, but to be honest with you, sometimes it's best just to let the glue dry naturally, and you'll actually end up with a stronger bond, because it's not as brittle when it dries naturally. So we can just brush on a little bit of extra thin, just at these contact points where the plastic refrigerant top is meeting the frame and the interior components. And that'll help just give you a pretty bit extra bond. That's that. That part is nicely on. Gives you a little bit more strength on the roof. And it finishes off nicely. Now, if we just do another test fit, making sure we start from the rear. Don't worry about the windscreen, it isn't fixed in. So that clips into the rear nicely, and you can see that is actually quite well formed to the shape of the cab. And then we clip that in. Just get the side clips in. There's a little ridge for them to clip into. Sometimes it goes straight away. There we go. You just hear a little clip and that's it in. So the roof now fits really rather nicely along the back, very nicely along the sides, and with the windscreen in, it's a good fit all round. Really, really, really nice. So well done, Hobby Boss. So we're now at the point where we've got the interior parts here ready to go. We've now got the roof ready to go, and we've got the interior ready to go. So we're actually at the stage where we can start painting, and we can do all the detail. We'll get the whole lot of this finished, and then we can think about moving on. The one thing we do need to think about is glazing. I'm still quite determined that I'm going to paint the inside first, fit the glazing after. But it might be worthwhile just to check and see how a pane or glass or two fits. I've also got to get the doors, because these need painting. So we've got the cab doors. Need to make sure there's nothing that needs to go on the interior of them. Because I am intending just to keep the doors closed. I'm not putting any personnel in this. It's just a straight out the box build. You could in fact glue the doors to the model, however it would be advantageous to be having the doors off just to help gain access to the interior. So there is possibly a handle that needs to go on there. There is a couple of small photo etch handles that need to go on to, there we go. So that's a beautiful fit, that. Yeah, there's a couple of small photo etch handles that need to go on the seats, just on the exterior, little grab handles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get those done. Going to get the handles done, and then I'm going to prime this, possibly with NATO black, and we'll come back and start looking at the paint. So see you again shortly. Right, just a quick one before we get on to the painting. I thought I'd show you just how I prepare my parts to paint. What I will do is stick them to a kebab stick, and I'll just use super glue, and I'll stick it somewhere on the underside where you're never going to see the glue mark. It doesn't leave much of a mark. It's a very temporary bond, but it means that you're completely hands free and you can get all the angles. You can rotate this part. You've got something to grip. You can pick these packets up for like £1 from most decent shops. These little parts I'll drill a little hole in the back where you're not going to see. A little bit of super glue, cocktail stick, slightly smaller for the smaller parts, or likes of the fire extinguisher. Then just stick it to the base where you're going to be gluing it down anyway, so you're not going to see that part. So the main thing is putting it somewhere where you're not going to see, but it gives you then the flexibility and the freedom to paint all angles without having to try and hold on to it. And to make a holder for these sticks, all I've got is some corrugated cardboard, cut it to strips roughly the same size, tape them together, and there you go. You've got a perfectly made holder, and it's free, less for the 12 inches of tape you need to stick it together. All you have to do is find a cardboard box that's made with this nice tri-wall corrugation, and there's your free part holder. But it's very, very handy. If you wanted, you could stick this to a cocktail stick as well, so you can hold this and twizzle it around. Not to worry too much, because we're obviously only painting the inside. But yeah, you've got all options on there to paint and get the parts manipulated in such an angle that you can get everywhere you need. So just a quick tip, something simple, but it's very, very effective, and I've done that for years. For the doors, for instance, as well, you can still use these sticks, but get some white tack. Get the white tack, squidge it on the end, on the outside of the door. Bang, there you go, part holder. So that's just a really quick tip on how to get your parts held and secured whilst you paint them, very, very effectively, very, very cheaply, and something that you can use time and time again. So these, I've got a little pot up on the back of my bench with lots of old sticks that I've used for painting. I keep them until they're just about done, and then and only then I'll throw them away. Once they've finished usefulness for painting, then I sometimes sharpen them and use them for a super glue applicator as well. So that's something else that can be done with it. But it's just these little hints and tips that make your modeling a little bit easier. And if it's easier, it's more fun, it's more enjoyable, and you get on with it. And that's really what it's all about. So anyway, that's enough for that. See you back again with the compressor on and the airbrush loaded up, and we will get on and paint these parts up. So see you again soon.